Hi, Van. Thank you
Hi,
so much
Leilani.
for being willing to be part of this project and to be
Oh, you're
interviewed.
welcome.
I'm looking forward to
Yes,
spending the next hour with you and finding out a bit about you. Um,
thank you.
I think it would be good just to start with, sort of to find out a little bit more about who Van Joines is and where you come from. You know, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your history.
I grew up in a small town in North Carolina in the United States. It was about 12,000 people, and went to school there and uh, played sports, football, baseball. Really enjoyed that, and then went to college at the State University in North Carolina, and originally trained to be an engineer,
Oh,
and
wow.
worked summers and holidays as in an engineering firm. And in the process of that, decided I really wanted to work with people. And I had been very influenced in college by a campus minister that I had. So I decided I wanted to go to seminary and become a campus minister and work with college students. So I did that and was a chaplain in a 4-year liberal arts college for about 4 years. And I also was directing the college counseling service at that college. And that's really where I first got introduced to transactional analysis.
Wow. So quite a change from engineering, then through to pastoral work, and then through to counselling. It sounds like.
Right. When I decided I wanted to study TA, I was being supervised by a psychiatrist who was just learning TA himself. And the only people on the East Coast at that time that were teaching transactional analysis were the Schiff family, who were in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So the psychiatrist invited Aaron Schiff, who was Jackie's first reparented son, to Chapel Hill to teach a 101 course. And at that point, I didn't know much about the Schiff family, and I didn't know Aaron had ever been schizophrenic. And I thought he was one of the best put together people I'd ever experienced. And then later I learned he had been formerly schizophrenic. He no longer was. And I thought, man, if an approach can do this, I want to learn everything I can about it. So I went out to the Weston Institute for Group and Family Therapy, where Bob and Mary Goulding were teaching in California, and spent 2 months in the summer of 1972 studying with them, and then took my CTA, and a couple of years later took my teaching and supervising certification in 1975.
Okay, so you did your 101 with Aaron Schiff.
Yes,
That's quite amazing, isn't it?
it is.
So then you did your 101 with him, and then you moved, and then you were saying that you'd gone to the West Coast.
Yes, the study with Bob and Mary Goulding.
Oh yes. So did you live over on the West Coast for a while?
Only for a summer,
Okay.
while I was studying with them, and they became my primary mentors. I went back for a week several times over the years, and I had them come to my institute. I set up, along with Graham Barnes, the Southeast Institute for Group and Family Therapy in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That had originally started in 1969 as a Fellowship for Racial and Economic Equality, to work on issues of social justice and racial reconciliation. And that was originally begun by Graham. And then he asked me to join him. I met him at the Weston Institute, and I started doing workshops and training programs with him. And then he decided to move the Institute to Chapel Hill, and we incorporated another psychologist and a psychiatrist in with us to form the Southeast Institute. And,
Wow, and that's still going today.
Yes, right.
So what year was that you started that?
We started the Institute in 1973, And Graham left in '79 to move to Europe. And I took over as president and have been president ever since. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary with a conference in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2019.
That's amazing. What an achievement.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a really exciting and enjoyable journey.
And is it specifically TA that you teach at the Southeast Institute?
Yes, we also integrate a lot of other approaches in with that. After setting up the institute, I went back and did a PhD in clinical psychology, and one of the primary focuses that I enjoyed was marriage and family therapy. So I became certified as a marital and family therapist and a supervisor in the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. So I train people in family and couples therapy and general systems theory, along with transactional analysis and Gestalt, which, as you know, probably is redecision therapy. And more recently, we have started training people in energy psychology and a form of energy therapy to treat trauma. Well, energy theory is really based on Chinese and Indian medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. The Chinese, of course, use the meridians to do acupuncture, and then later people who, like Roger Callahan, and John Diamond, who was from Australia, began to apply this in terms of psychotherapy. And so one branch of energy therapy works primarily with the meridians to clear trauma by tapping on the various acupoints along the meridians. And the particular approach that I use and have developed is one in which we use the energy centers, the chakras in the body, to clear traumatic experiences from the past. And it's really a very effective and easy way to clear trauma. And it integrates nicely with TA and redecision therapy, which I really like.
Nice. So would you say that your passion is in redecision? Yeah,
that's my basics home. That's what I originally discovered that was really powerful and most effective. Modern neuroscience, now has determined that it's really working with the emotional brain that really produces lasting change rather than working with the cognitive brain. And redecision therapy did that all along in terms of using Gestalt techniques to integrate along with the cognitive framework of transactional analysis. And it made a really powerful approach and worked primarily with getting people into experiencing rather than just talking about the difficulty they were experiencing in order to really rewire, create new neural pathways in the brain. And it really is, in my experience, much more effective and lasting than cognitive work.
And how wonderful to be around in those early days and experience people like the Gouldings and the Schiffs. And did you train with Vann?
I really went to my first TA conference the summer that right after Berne had died. He died in the summer of 1970. And I went to the conference in 71.
That was a bit selfish of him, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
He wasn't.
I saw lots of videotapes and interviews with Berne, but I never actually got to meet him in person.
It sounds like you were really inspired, though, in those early days. What was it that really inspired you about TA, apart from Aaron Schiff, who, as he said, seemed like a very well-functioning person?
Yeah. Well, I really, appreciated the geniusness of Eric Berne in taking very complex ideas and expressing them in very ordinary, everyday English terms. And I think you have to be really intelligent to be able to translate, very complex ideas into very simple language, which Berne did. Unfortunately, a lot of people misperceive what he's describing and often dismiss it as simplistic. But the more I go back and look at Berne's early work, the more impressed I am in terms of what a genius he was in being able to do that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And I guess it was an interesting time after he died. I suppose not having been there, I'm aware that there was quite a lot of new theory that was developed in that time. And I also get a sense that there was sort of quite a bit of argy-bargy, bit of disagreement. I wonder what it was like, what was it like for you to live through those years just after he died?
Well, there was a lot of jockeying for power in terms of who was really going to take Berne's place and whose theory, what school of theory was actually going to be followed primarily. And of course, that continues until today. My experience is the best therapy results from integrating the different approaches. There's no one approach that is really right for everybody in every situation. And so I think it's really important to integrate the different ways of working into what works best, what is most effective. One of the real values of having a training institute is that we've had people from almost every school of psychotherapy imaginable in to teach workshops over the years. And I continue to be impressed by the clarity of transactional analysis, that it really helps you understand the other theories in a much more helpful way and be able to integrate the best of all these different approaches. I often think about the story of the 5 blind men who went to see the elephant, and one was put at the leg, one at the trunk, one at the ear, one at the side, and one at the tail. And they came back home and they got in this big argument about what an elephant was really like, because they all had a slightly different perspective. And when in reality, they were all describing the same phenomena from different points of view. And I think that's true in psychotherapy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Within TA and within the wider psychotherapy world, I think it's like different perspectives, and all can work in different situations. Lovely. Okay. So what were your questions about TA in the early days? Did you have any frustrations or questions in those early days about TA theory?
I had probably lots of questions, wanting to learn more and wanting to understand more. And I really read everything I could find that people had written on TA and studied with as many different teachers and trainers as I could find, which was very helpful. There are always certain parts of theory that can be more fully elaborated, or places where the theory can be filled in and with other perspectives. So that's what I tried to do in terms of learning the overall approach.
And I guess that was quite challenging. This was the early 70s. You're in North Carolina. There's a little bit going on the East Coast, a lot going on the West Coast. But just logistically, I imagine it was quite difficult to access different trainers at that time.
Yes, that's why we mostly invited people to come to our institute.
Very sensible.
Excuse me. And
very sensible to set up a training institute so you could get people to come to you.
Yeah, fortunately, we already had the training institute, so it was easy to invite people in and get people to come to workshops.
Nice. So who have you had? Give us some examples of who you've had over the years. Not everyone. I know you've been around for 50 years in that training institute, but yeah.
Bob and Mary Goulding, Irv and Miriam Polster in Gestalt, Jackie Schiff, of course, Jack Doucet, Steve Cartman, Claude Steiner, Muriel James, Vanita English, Pamela Venn, Bill Holloway.
Everyone, really.
Yeah,
Everyone apart from Eric Berne.
almost, yes.
Yeah, that's lovely. That must have been such a rich experience for you. And,
Yeah, it
and
was.
in your sort of early days of your developing your ideas, what do you think that you feel that you've contributed to TA?
Well, from my background in systems theory, one of the things I was really interested in is looking at how TA, in fact, is a systems theory. And I wrote an article that was published in TA after Eric Berne that Graham Barnes edited, really looking at how we function both in terms of the intrapsychic system, the interpersonal system, the larger family system and social systems. And in that early article, developed the idea of the projection screen and how people play games both from parent and child in terms of transference phenomena. Carlo Moiso was at a workshop I did in Villars and picked up on that and, of course, wrote his article on transference and countertransference using the idea of the projection screen. And also looked at a lot at what goes on intrapsychically and how symbiotic relationships that we have with parents and other people actually get internalized, and how much of what we're doing from our child, of course, is being influenced by our parent and vice versa, and how we operate both symbiotically and also autonomously, depending on the relationships that we internalize.
So I'm thinking about Ray Little's idea of the relational units. Does that fit with that idea?
Yeah, that's really where he got the idea of the relational units, ego state relational units, was from that early article that I wrote. And
Nice.
He's, of course, continued to develop that. And but he and I are very much on the same page in terms of the way we think and see things.
Lovely. Any other ideas that you introduced in those early days?
Well, I wrote an article on the different types of anger looked at developmentally. I've always worked from a developmental model because that's what made the most sense to me in terms of where things came from that we're doing in the present. And what I began to realize is that we have different types of anger at different stages. There's early oral rage. There is during what traditionally was described as the anal stage, the separation individuation stage, we often have anger that really has to do with being controlled and wanting to be free and be autonomous. And a lot of that anger needs to be just given up. And then there's Oedipal anger that is really grandiose, and people are needing to experience having the freedom to have all of that energy in their body and be able to express it and interact with it in healthy ways. And then there's latency age anger, in which kids are really needing to be able to hassle with their parents and argue in order to get information clear that they're attempting to figure out about the world. So one of the things that I realized is you have to work differently with anger depending on this particular stage that you're dealing with developmentally.
Okay, so there's different angers at different developmental stages.
Right.
And presumably if children are allowed to feel and express their anger and they feel appropriately responded to and held, then that's okay. But otherwise they end up as an adult that is still trying to express their anger in that early developmental way. Is that?
Yes, or afraid of their anger because they've never had anybody to safely help them contain it.
So how might you work differently with someone depending on the developmental age of their anger?
With early oral rage, it's really anger in response to the not getting an appropriate recognition or response from the environment, and it needs to be expressed, and the person needs to feel free to express their power in terms of being able to get the environment to respond. At latency, or actually if you think about the Oedipal anger, often what is helpful for people who've never gotten their anger appropriately limited, 6 is when kids are really testing the limits of their power. One of the exercises that we often use that's very helpful is to have people lie on a mattress to be safely held and in a way that they can't get hurt, and to just use their energy to try to get up and let out all their anger. And what they experience is that they can have all their power and energy and they don't get hurt, no one else gets hurt. And they experience safe containment. And it helps correct the grandiosity that they often have. When they're afraid of their anger, they're often afraid if they get angry, they're just going to destroy the whole world. There's not going to be any limit there or boundary. So it really helps them integrate boundaries on a bodily level.
And if people want to read up more on that article, was that a TAJ article?
Yes, it's a TAJ article.
And it seems to me, because people know you very well for co-writing TA Today and personality adaptations, that sort of some of these really interesting early ideas you have almost sort of get lost and get attributed to other people. So I really wanted to mention them, really, that these were ideas that came from you. I guess
one of the things I'm currently interested in is really developing more the information around the adaptations, and for lay people, I'm currently writing a book for lay people on the adaptations. I hope to have it out within the next year or so, because I think that information is so useful in terms of our relationships and life and how to communicate and avoid difficulty and problems in communication. Paul Ware, who is a psychiatrist in Shreveport, Louisiana, was the first to really talk about personality adaptations. He wrote an early article in the TA Journal describing 6 core adaptations. And I invited him to one of our conferences. We had annual conferences at that point each spring, and I invited him to come to one of our conferences and present. And his ideas made the most sense of any diagnostic scheme that I had ever come across, because it actually was a guide to treatment, not as opposed to just labeling people, in terms of his concept of the doors of therapy and so on. And so I began to work with that in about 1975 or so, and began to see a lot of things that he had not described, and began to contribute a lot of ideas of my own to that. Taby Kaler had also been doing his doctorate at that time and focused on different types of personality styles. And he was comparing notes. He and Paul were good friends, and they compared notes about what they were seeing. And so that was really the early origins. I kept asking Paul about every year or so when he was going to write a book on it, because it was so helpful, I thought, in terms of working with folks. And he kept saying, well, maybe next year. And after about 20 years of that, I finally said, can I write the book? And he said, sure, go ahead. And so I wrote first draft of the book and then asked Ian if he would edit it because of his work with me in TA Today. And he said sure, and wanted to add a little more of Taby's work. I don't use process therapy. I really don't use Taby's model, which was developed more as a cognitive model for business and industry. I use more the adaptations as a redecision, integrated with redecision therapy. So the book we ended up with was kind of an integration of Paul's work and Taby's work, along with the things that I had developed and contributed. And we published that in 2002.
So tell me a bit about the collaboration with Ian on TA Today. It's like, how did that come about?
Really through Adrienne Lee. I think Ian said, ask her if she knew of anybody who was interested in writing a basic book on TA, and she said, contact Vann Joines, because I think he really has an interest in that. So Ian did, and I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So for the first edition of TA Today in 1987, we mailed manuscripts back and forth across the Atlantic, and the book on personality adaptations was much easier because we could, email it back and forth by then. And also the revision that we did the second revision of TA Today in 2012.
Wow. So you decided to write a book with Ian, even though it sounds like you didn't really know him.
I knew of him, and Ian had me come over and teach personality adaptations in a workshop. I think it was about the time that it may be a little before we started on writing TA Today. So I knew him. And I really enjoyed his clear thinking and organization, and we thought a lot alike in terms of, there was very little disagreement in terms of the way we perceive things and what we wanted to do with the book and so on. So that worked out very well.
Mm. And what a fabulous book you produced. I imagine every single TA student in the world probably reads TA Today, don't they?
I get lots of feedback about that. Yes.
Yeah,
it's really been very rewarding.
Are there other books? Other books that you've written, Vann?
Well, I wrote a guide to the use of a questionnaire that I developed to assess the adaptations, administrative scoring interpretive guide, and I did the questionnaire as a primary project for my doctorate, which was a fun process. And I've written lots of articles and contributed chapters to a number of different books, but so far, those are the only complete books that I've written.
So far, sounds like there might be some to come.
Yes, I want to do an updated book on redecision therapy too. There's a lot that has been developed since Bob and Mary's first book.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. And you're still here, and you're still involved in TA, and you're still running the training institute. What are your passions? What are your passions now? What are you interested in?
Well, I've been traveling before COVID. I was traveling to China a couple of times a year, and to Korea and to Japan, and doing training programs primarily in Japan and Korea. And in China. I've been to each of those countries over probably about 12 times, and we had training programs in both of those. And unfortunately, that's been interrupted by COVID, but I hope once the virus is contained to be able to go back and work in those countries. It's really exciting working there, because the energy is like the early 70s in this country when TA was first being developed. People are very excited and want to learn all they can. So it's fun working with them.
Yeah, lovely. I think we've had I've experienced a similar thing in sort of Eastern Europe. It's like people just loving these new ideas, and it's so lovely to be a part of that, isn't it? To train a group that have such an appetite for learning something new. So how exciting! So taking it to a completely new culture, and do you think that the ideas translate well into a sort of Oriental culture?
Yes, there are different. There are differences culturally in the parent ego state from country to country, but the child ego state is really universal. At the child level, we're all alike, and so it's really easy. For example, doing therapy in other cultures, because even without knowing the language, you can often intuit what people are saying from their child ego state. And you almost don't need to have the language to do therapy.
Yeah,
it's amazing how that works.
Yeah, so that must be interesting. I imagine you're working with translators rather than speaking Chinese.
Yes, right.
And how are you experiencing that? Is that fun?
Yes, it is. I've done so much of it that it's kind of automatic now, and I mean, seems very natural in terms of working with translators. You simply have to plan for what you're teaching to take about twice as long with translation. That's the only difference.
And also for people not to laugh necessarily in the right places. I know when I talk to translators, I tell a joke and then they don't laugh, and then they laugh.
That's right. It just falls flat.
couple of minutes later. And tell me what your passions are outside of counseling and psychotherapy. What else are you interested in?
Well, I like all kinds of water sports. I have been windsurfing for probably 30 years and really enjoy that. I'm almost getting to an age where I can't quite have the same level of endurance that I had, but I really enjoy that. I like downhill skiing, and usually go to ski at least once a year, again before COVID.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy just getting together with good friends and socializing, and all of us getting in our natural child and just having a ball.
Yeah. So having fun with other people, connecting with other people, it sounds like, but also quite, sports. Well, certain sports. And are there mountains in North Carolina? I don't think there are there?
Yeah, there are. They're the Appalachian Mountains.
Oh, yeah.
But the trails are fairly short, the ski trails, and so we usually go out to Colorado or Utah to do downhill snow skiing.
How lovely.
But I do a lot of hiking in the mountains of North Carolina, which are really beautiful.
And in terms of the TA community, what are your hopes for the future of the TA community? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I'd like to see more cooperation and integration. I hope at some point we get beyond the jockeying for power and, who has the best theory, and get more to a collaborative stage of really developing ideas in a more holistic way. And I hope that a lot of the energy work will be integrated in with transactional analysis. Some people have already begun to do that, myself. Also, John and Laurie Weiss have done a fair amount of that. And other people as well. I'm not thinking of all the people right now, but I think each have a lot to contribute to one another.
Yeah, so you'd really like to see people working collaboratively
together,
and that sounds good. And And I suppose I'm aware that in Europe we have a lot of different training organisations and a lot of different countries and with TA. But in the US, that you're quite limited. There's not very much TA training going on in the US. Is that right?
Not as much as there used to be. I think in the U.S., there's no other approach to therapy that requires as much training and supervision and so forth. So the USTA Association developed a transactional analysis practitioner program that has been very popular, and a lot of people are doing that. It only requires about a year of training for the first level, and then another year for the second level, and a couple of more years to teach and train other people as a transactional analysis practitioner. And then if a lot of people, once they really get into TA, get interested in going on for CTA and possibly even teaching membership. But a lot of people in this country, because TA's requirements are much more rigorous, are not as interested in jumping through that many hoops before they can practice, officially be certified in a particular approach.
Yeah, it is a lot, isn't it? It's a very intensive, good process, but certainly an intense process. So the people that you train at your institute, do they go for CTA or do they go for the TA practitioner?
Everybody goes for the TA practitioner, and then some of those folks go on for CTA. But they're not. They are not. They are much fewer in number than the people who train for transactional analysis practitioner.
And I'm aware that you've travelled in Europe and taught at various different places.
Yes.
Is that something that you've enjoyed doing over the years?
Yes, I have. It's been a great way to see the world. I've taught and trained in over 30 countries now, I think. And so, and I have albums from all the different, photograph albums from all the different countries and everything. And so it's really nice to go back and look at those and relive all those experiences.
That's
over the years.
Amazing. 30 countries. Come on, name a few. Let's hear at least some of them.
I've been to the UK. I've been to Germany, France, Belgium, Switzerland, Spain, Switzerland that I mentioned, most
Italy.
of the Italy, right? All of the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. Been to this, what was the Soviet Union before it broke up now, the various Russian countries. And I've been to Australia, New Zealand, been to China, Japan, Korea, India, several countries in South America, in Central America, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, and of course Canada. So,
wow,
quite a few.
Where's your next trip planned for? Apart from China, where would you like to go and teach some TA?
Well, not so much teach, but I really want to visit Portugal. I love Spain, and I really want to see Portugal now because I hear it's really beautiful. And I'd like to go to Greece and the Greek Isles. I haven't been there yet, so I want to go there. And those are and Iceland is another destination I'd like to go to.
Oh yeah, I would definitely recommend Iceland.
Yes.
Quite like a little TA training centre in Iceland.
Good.
Maybe you could come across, we could go across.
Right.
It's an amazing place. So how do you keep yourself passionate about this stuff? You've been working in this industry for over 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that really attracted me to therapy was it's kind of like working a puzzle. Everybody's unique, everybody's different, and figuring out what's going on with them and how best to help them change and grow and develop is always exciting. Irv Polster wrote a book, every person's life is worth a novel, and I think that's absolutely true. It's really fascinating to hear people's stories and their experiences, and so that's really what keeps me interested in enjoying this work.
And it seems to me, Vann, that you're someone that's always learning. When I look at all the different qualifications and courses and things that you've done, it's like you like to learn and develop yourself.
Well, I want to continue to look at what's on the cutting edge. I've always been somebody who looked for what worked. I've been very much of a pragmatist and integrating from all different approaches, what is most effective in helping people change and grow, and integrating that into what I do.
And do you have ideas of your own that you'd like to continue to develop in TA?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, applying the adaptations to lay people in everyday, ordinary life. And I think our adaptations really offer an important key to how we either succeed or not in terms of how we relate to other people. And I think relationships are really the key.
Yeah, so it's about opening up to a wider community that can make use of these ideas.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Anything else that you would like the audience to know about you or about your ideas?
Well, one other area that I'm very interested in is looking at the whole issue of spirituality and morality. I think with the decline of many of religions and church organizations and so forth, that people have kind of lost their moral compass. And, I think we've got all of these nationalistic leaders who, in many cases, are narcissistic and really not very caring about their fellow human beings. And so I think TA really lends itself well to with the whole idea that each of us have worth, value, and dignity as human beings, to recover a sense of our morality and spirituality, and making the world a better place for everyone.
And it sounds like that's something that's really core to you and your values and your heart, I suppose, is the sense I get. And I wonder how you envisage facilitating others in helping them to find their own moral compass.
Well, I think it really starts at the personal level in terms of look at what is ultimately important to you and valuable to you, and how the way that all of us best get our needs met is in cooperation with other people getting their needs met. And I heard a program, a report earlier on just basic kindness and redeveloping that sense of kindness in terms of just how we interact with everybody on a daily basis, and how essential that is in terms of our own feelings of self-worth and self-esteem, as well as other people.
And then we just need to find a way to get those people into political power, don't we?
That's right. Well, I think our new president is a person like that, fortunately. I'm very optimistic about our new president and what he will be able to do.
I am also optimistic.
Yes.
So it's been lovely to talk to you, Vann. Thank you so much for sharing yourself and your passions and your ideas. And it's been great to hear about your journey through TA. I wonder if there's anything that you would like to say before we sort of draw this interview to an end.
I hope people will continue to make TA an important part of their lives in terms of really living the principles that we've learned. And I think together we can make the world a much better place.
I agree. And I want to personally thank you for being willing to do this, and also for your contribution to TA. As I mentioned earlier on, I think some of your early ideas get missed because other people have sort of taken them and developed them, and because you're so well known for TA today and personality adaptation. So I really want to honour those really important ideas that you've brought into the TA community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.